Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to an extremely interesting episode of the Wisdom Wealth Space. I welcome you all. It is a beautiful evening out here, and I am sure it's equally beautiful for each one of you out there. And like promised last time, I said we would be back with another exciting episode with an exciting concept with an extremely interesting guest, and I am extremely confident that I have risen up vision, and I have with us today Mr. Swaroop Mohanty, who is the CEO of Mirai Asset Mutual Fund. So Swaroop, a very warm welcome to the Wisdom Wealth Space.
Yeah, Nirav, thank you so much for doing this on behalf of Mire Asset. I'd like to thank all of you. You are here, and of course, thank Wisdom for enabling this. It's one of my early days on Twitter Spaces, so I'm a novice on Twitter Spaces. So thank you for the opportunity.
So, Swaroop, this is almost our privilege that you get to spend your early days on Twitter Spaces with us here among our listeners. So, this is going to be an extremely interesting episode. We often talk about domestic markets, domestic economies, but there is one very interesting that is in the building, and that is international investing. So we have dedicated this episode to going global, and who better than you to help us understand this better, right? So Swaroop, without any further ado, I'm going to jump into my first question. That is something that people keep asking me this question, and I keep asking our guests this question. It's almost quintessential, and the question is, "Market kya bolta hai?" So this time I'll give you some more context around it. So Indian media is talking about the deteriorating public health situation globally, especially the developed economies. Global analysts are raving about the risks in the form of global reflation, sooner than expected rollback of the stimulus, which is popularly known as the tapering, and which is associated with the probability of a rerun of the taper tantrum. By force of habit, Indian analysts like me also tend to extrapolate it and expect that these worries will always find its way into the Indian markets also eventually. But having said this, investors and broader equity markets, not just in India, but also globally, have a very different story to tell. We are touching all-time highs. So, according to you, market kya bolta hai? How is the global economy shaping, and how are the markets going?
See, Nirav, you asked too large a question for a person like me to answer. But just if you look at simplifying everything that you said, obviously we are in the midst of an incredible and an unheard of pandemic. I mean, we probably are seeing it for the first time, many of us, and I hope and pray that we this is the last time we see it. But when that
Right.
happens, the impact will not only be there, but it will be large. It will be difficult to even predict how long the impact will be after the end of this pandemic, hopefully. But what I've learned from my past and seeing that these kind of pandemics or market crisis or crashes is that every such event has a start date and an end date, right?
Hmm.
That start date and end date is not under our control. What is under our control is what we do during this phase. Some of us who've seen these in the past, are reacting better this time. Some of the people who are seeing it for the first time will react a little differently to the past. So
Right.
that's what it is from the globe perspective. Yes, some part might go down, but when you look at healthcare and its ancillary stuff, this is the time to step up. My personal opinion was at the beginning of the pandemic, what should have been a kicker to healthcare in India is actually a huge kicker to digitization. And look at
Right.
what has happened to the fintech space, to the tech space. Look at what's happened to the mutual fund space. Right, we are
Right.
sitting at an all. Forget markets. We are sitting at an all-time high in our inflow of money because it's natural that sitting at home, we spend our money either on our needs or our wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even if I want to spend something on my want, I'm not able to. So
Right.
there is a certain
Right.
amount of surplus which is growing in everybody's expense statement, and hence this pent up demand to now invest. Of course, when you are staring death very closely, which many people have done in this period, their attitude towards
Mm.
life will change. And when that
Right.
changes, a new world will unfold. I firmly believe, there was this before Christ and after Christ. Now it is before COVID and after COVID. As simple as that.
So you put it in such a beautiful way. So I will steer this conversation towards the theme, the broader theme of this conversation, that is global investing. So there is one, among the various biases that investors have, there is one very particular bias that I want to start off with, and that is the home bias. Investors are extremely comfortable investing in stocks, or mutual funds investing in stocks that they're aware about. They love to look at portfolios which have underlyings with names that they know about. But you know except for a few handful of savvy or adventurous investors, most are worried whether it would actually be efficient to invest in markets beyond our home market. Would it really be smart to invest in markets beyond India and others? So, what are your thoughts on this specific concern or the specific bias that investors are having?
This bias is very natural, no? It is always
Hmm.
very, very easy to be in a comfort zone and in things that you know. That is not just relevant in India. Home bias is relevant across the world. Across
Right.
the world, the bulk of anybody's money is invested in their own
Hmm.
countries, and that's how India is, and that is how it will be for a long time. There is nothing wrong with it because of the basic fact that India has been a growing economy, right, and will continue to be a
Right.
growing economy. So it's not an economy which is losing you money anyway. So
Right.
invested in India also makes you money, which is the best part of the home bias of India. But what happens is when you start investing, and more often than not, investing is about diversification. Investing is
Hmm.
about catching different kind of asset classes as a form of portfolio. But what has dawned
Hmm.
up to onto all of us, and I am also a late starter to it. Let me be very upfront and lay that out at the beginning of this discussion. That information about global investing and access to global investing was never talked about at this larger state as it was, probably in the past, right?
Right. Right.
What starts with the principal basis of diversification is that we should go out and buy something which is different,
Hmm.
right? That is what
Hmm.
leads to diversification, and that is where this fundamental concept starts. That the fact is India is just 3% of global market, means
Hmm.
that the larger part of the global market is outside India.
Right. Right.
97% of the markets are outside India, which is the starting point, right? Which is talked about, and one needs to reiterate that for it to sink down a little further, right?
Hmm.
And the second part is the stage that India is from an economy perspective is very different from other economies.
Right.
The stocks and the sectors that India throws up is very different from what you get in other countries because of the stages that those economies are. While you can look at forward-looking industry economies, but we had visited Vietnam. I had visited first time 2 years ago,
Hmm.
and I saw a country which was twice our infrastructure, with an stock market which is 10 years before us. So it looked an
Right.
opportunity. If there were an option, why not invest in Vietnam? But when you look
Right.
at, say, the other evolved countries, they offer you structures and companies and sectors which are not there in India. So the real case of diversification starts. Hence, this discussion is very relevant at this point of time. There are other factors also, but to me, this is the crux of the whole thing, that you actually diversify and own something which is not in your basket in your present country.
Understood. Understood. So you made a very interesting point, when you shared the anecdote on your visit to Vietnam and the opportunity that was, visible at least at a very high level. We'll spare the details there. But this begs my next question. Whenever we speak about international investing, it is almost synonymous to investing in the US. Is it because that we tend to correlate the quality of opportunities to the large market capitalization, or perhaps the largest market capitalization that US offers, or is this simply because there aren't many non-US oriented products available to Indian investors? Why is this happening? Why are we only talking about US as an industry?
I think two you rightfully pointed out. One I'd like to add from my side. Of course, when
Hmm.
you look at the global market, the fact that 50% of global market is US is automatically skewing everything there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And in a tech world, and when all of us are looking at technology, it's a small fact that if you really want to take a tech exposure, it is US,
Right.
right? It offers, and then the third part comes is the size of these the companies that are coming from the US are just unbelievable, right? Unbelievably large, and mostly, most of the companies are already there in our lives.
Right.
So the companies are more, what can I say? There is a bias already because we use most of them, and I think the other part which I would like to say about other markets is the information flow from other markets, is a
Hmm.
personal opinion,
Hmm.
is not as large as the information flow from, say, the US. The
Hmm.
kind of information we get about the different indices and the different companies that have worked in the US is not as strong as the other markets. Say we come from South Korea.
Hmm. Hmm.
The information flow about what happens in South Korea is
Hmm.
not as large as, say, the information that comes from US. I mean, in spite of South Korean companies becoming a household name in a lot of sectors in India, you really do not know what goes on in South Korea. I mean, the first time I visited South Korea, I mean, a friend of mine was visiting South Korea 12 years ago, and I was asking who goes to South Korea to on a vacation.
Right.
So that's why US, and you talk about US, I've been hearing people wanting to go to US from my childhood, right? That's the first stop.
Huh.
So it's quite natural. But when you look at it from a investing factual perspective, it is the largest market of the world, catering to the largest industries of the world. It is the developed country of the world, and the world trades in dollars.
Right.
Right. The Warren Buffett during the 2008 financial crisis said that irrespective of whatever happens, the world does trade in dollars, so it doesn't have a recourse, which is so true. So it is natural that US will be the first stop. It is the largest equity market. It is the most transparent and the most liquid. So makes it a very is definitely the number one stop for our investors. No doubt about that.
Right. So, while sharing this anecdote about how the information flow has been, and perhaps in South Korea, in your example, versus how it is in the US, it leads us to believe that the information flow in US is great, right? The information
Yeah,
anomaly is pretty slim there, and this is what makes it typically, what we academically call as an efficient market, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So, in an efficient market, it is almost considered that passive is the way ahead, and alpha generation opportunities is practically dead. Okay, so I don't know if we could say that. I am leaving that open ended, but the investors here at least consider that in an efficient market like the US, alpha generation opportunities are practically dead, and these are the very investors who think that alpha is the only way money can be made, or it is the best way to make money by chasing alpha generating opportunities. So these investors typically have a question that why invest in a market where almost everything is always priced in, wherein whereas on the other hand we can put all our money in a semi strong efficient market like India, where there is still a lot many pockets where alpha can be generated, and our fund managers can do a great job at delivering an alpha. So the question is twofold. One, is alpha generation actually the only way to make money? And two, what about investors who want to bet solely on India, which is rich in terms of alpha generation opportunities, versus putting their money in passive products that are US based?
See, Nirav, alpha generation, whether it's dead or not, I really do not know, but I
Hmm.
follow a very simple philosophy in life of not concluding. So time will tell whether alpha generation is dead or not. It can come back in various forms in the US market only. I mean,
Hmm.
there is obviously the beta products which are now coming in, which are called the smart beta indices,
Hmm.
which are taking some of those old alpha generating techniques or active fund management techniques to form very interesting indices, which then give market beating returns. So
Right.
alpha generation in the US is back in a new form in the smart beta indices. But
Hmm.
this whole alpha generation discussion starts with what we call the SPIVA report,
Hmm.
and that sort of gives you the kind of market versus active fund management outperformance or underperformance. To coming to your question of whether money is made out of alpha generation or not, one has to go about thinking how alpha is generated, and that is through a laid down process and in a disciplined manner following that process. As efficiency starts growing, the avenue of picking up stocks in an individual manner, or by the time you reach a stock thinking you are the only one in an efficient market, you find that everybody has found that stock because information flow is so quick and so fast, right? And
Right.
if you look at the SPIVA report globally, or say you look at the US, in the last 11 years, the large cap funds have not beaten the benchmark. Now, if you look at the Indian report, and I would request all of you to please read out the SPIVA report. I'm told the SPIVA report now comes out mid-year, so please look at the SPIVA report, and the answer is already there. When you compare the SPIVA report of last year's SPIVA report of Indian funds vis-a-vis the BSE 100, 88% of our funds had not beaten the benchmark. That's the reality. Whether
Hmm.
you want to acknowledge that or not, that's a separate thing,
Hmm.
right? That means on an average, worldwide, it is 50%. That
Hmm.
means the average active fund manager finds it difficult to beat the benchmark. That is how it is globally, right?
Right.
And then in India, some part of it is already true. The large cap is under pressure on beating the benchmark. In this entire run up, when I had thought, it is an active fund management play, in this entire run up of COVID, I would request everybody to go and check the alpha generation over the benchmark in mid and small cap spaces also. The story is already beginning to play out, and that's just a factor of efficiency in the market, and it's good that efficiency in the market is coming about, but it just leads to better leads to better data flow, better information flow, and money making finds its own way. I mean, like I said, which had become a complete flat product in the US in the form of passives, is making a huge comeback through the smart beta products. In India too, we will find our own way. I mean, but the great part of India is, there is enough talent in India to give you alpha. There are very good fund managers in India who still can produce alpha. And at the same time, there is a great story in the passive side building. So our view is a combination of both can give you a very good portfolio is our belief, because with passive investing you cannot take away the fact that it is rule based, so it will definitely follow the discipline. The other part is, of course, the costs come into play, and I do believe that the Indian brain is capable of giving you fantastic indices in the future. It is a thinking brain, and watch out for the Indian brains as they unfold into the smart beta market.
Absolutely, Swaroop. In fact, we have already seen a couple of promising funds in the segment, and it is only a trailer to what is to what the future holds for investors, especially Indian investors, right? So,
Yeah, Nirav,
yeah.
I mean, just to cut you short, one
Hmm.
thing which has to be highlighted, and
Hmm.
especially from the active fund management perspective, and I'm restricting it only to the mutual fund
Hmm.
side, because the plethora of funds that can unfold on the PMS and the AFI side is a different story altogether. Okay.
Right.
But when you restrict it to the active mutual fund space, now there is categorization of funds. The
Right.
regulator has laid out what we can do and clearly laid out what we can't do.
Right.
So the ideation that will happen in creation of new ideas, I believe a lot of that will happen on the passive side, and for people who do not have the demat side will get an FOF to feed into it. So it's not that ideation will not happen. It will happen, but a lot more ideation is possible because of the state of the regulation and our industry. A lot of ideation is forced to happen on the passive side also. We cannot deny that.
Absolutely, I completely understand that. So while you were sharing this, your perspectives on this very topic, you also spoke about. So see, as long as we are here, and since you're doing a great job at debunking popular myths related to international investing, I have to ask this question. Also since most of your products are directed in this direction, most investors have a question saying that. We accept that the US markets are pretty deep. The large companies are extremely large, but then isn't this the size itself a barrier to their own growth? So a company that is this large, how much more can it grow from here on? Isn't everything already priced in? Aren't they already trading at great valuations, and they have the highest market share which is visibly possible? Isn't it that these large companies based out of the US are already enjoying the summit? Is it the right way to think about this, Swaroop?
Nirav, I would believe on the contrary, because let me give you
Hmm.
some basic data. Okay. Because
Hmm.
these sizes need to sink into a lot of people
Hmm.
like me too. When I first saw this data,
Right.
I mean, let me talk about very selfishly about a product which we've launched. So I've got the data from there. So that is
Hmm.
the source. If you look
Hmm.
at the top 50 S&P 500 companies, the
Hmm.
combined market is 23 trillion.
Right.
We are talking about 10 times India.
Right.
Okay, we are talking about their revenue being 4.7 trillion. Okay, that is 13 times Indian government's total receipt in financial year 1920. We are
Hmm.
talking about forex reserves of 810 billion in 50 companies. Okay,
Right.
which is, you know, far higher than what RBI holds in 2021, and RBI is holding an all-time high in forex. Okay, we are
Right.
talking about net income of over 560 billion, which exceeds the combined net income of all Indian equity. So
Right.
when you look at things of this size,
Hmm.
and you look at a polarized world post COVID, where clearly automated companies, clearly larger companies have a huge head start over, say, the smaller ones, the large are set to become larger. In fact, I'll
Right.
go one step in saying that they've amassed the kind of money power to buy out competition. And we've seen a
Hmm.
fair amount of them in the past, right?
Right.
My best example, or my most, because I've never been on Facebook, so I would always
Hmm.
tout saying that I don't need Facebook in life.
Hmm.
But just when WhatsApp was becoming a threat,
Hmm.
Facebook went out and bought out WhatsApp. So I am back to Facebook.
Right.
When I got out of Apple, I said, okay, I've got out of Apple. I'm in Android, but I can't get out of iTunes.
Right.
So these are companies which will trail you, which will get into your lives, and till India does not have, say, when I'll reflect on, say, the South Korea example, where South Korea has a neighbor which counters Google,
Hmm.
right? India does not have that. So when you don't have that, you will only see these companies getting deeper into the globe and becoming bigger than what they were, and that's a reality. The market cap, and look at our Indian companies, no? Look at the
Right.
market cap change of the in the Nifty 50. Where is it
Hmm.
stopping?
Right. Right.
Right. So on the contrary, post COVID, mark my words on this, in a polarized world, the big will get bigger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can totally see that happening. I can totally appreciate from where you're coming. In fact, as long as we're talking about these large companies and the growth potential, it is a closer look at data would suggest that it is not quite about alpha as much as it is about the delta, the change, the rate of
Correct.
growth in these companies, right? And I feel personally, investors tend to look at international investing more from a diversification or slash, let's call it, a hedge in most cases, but they don't seem to appreciate the value that international investing could deliver in its core portfolio, even from a performance standpoint. So, what are your thoughts on this? Is it fair to limit the utility of international investing to only diversification, or is there actually a merit in looking at it to drive core performance?
I mean, let's bring back the earlier question of home bias versus external investing. The
Hmm.
fact that in the last 10 years, the US market has outperformed India 7 times
Right.
just answers that question. And in the last 10 years, we've held India only.
Hmm.
So we've held a country which is underperformed US 7 years out of 10. So this it's not about just geographical diversification. It is also about performance diversification. It is not, and the globe performance is cyclical in nature. I mean, US has been, of course, dominated the last 10 years. But when you
Right.
look at the Asian companies has not been bad too. So, in the future, what starts with, and we've seen enough of China already in the last 2, 3 years,
Right.
right? And then post this cleanup of China, China looks stronger to me than it was earlier. So it's getting re-rated. So people who want to look at China, which are obviously far more evolved investors than just people who start with taking the US sort of step. But
Hmm.
things that need to be kept in the mind are these are different countries, so hence
Right.
their level of markets are different, the volatility of these markets are different, so the allocation that one makes to these countries have to be very definite. It has to be part of your overall allocation. How much you allocate depends on the risk profile, and so for first time investors, it's very very important to set that sort of benchmark that I will not go beyond this allocation. And within that allocation, as you rightly said, if investment there is gone passive, who are we to
Right.
invest in an active format, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
first step would be to take the passive route, and thankfully today India has those passive funds available at some very decent costs,
Right.
right? If you were
Right.
to go and invest in those stocks directly, which will soon become a reality in India, you will see the difference in cost that will come about and the efficiency which a fund brings to you because of our negotiation power with the various intermediaries, and it
Right.
being available at some very good cost. So when you put all this together, it is not just geographical diversification, it is also return diversification.
Right. And in fact, as you were speaking, I recollected my question on home bias, and I realized, in this era of globalization, anyone having a home bias, it doesn't really matter because the world is your home. If you look at the
Correct.
top 50 companies on S&P 500, you would be able to identify at least 40 out of these 50 companies and can identify it in and around you. Right.
You are using them daily,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
So you cannot not do away with not looking at these companies. Let us, I mean, if you look at some of the names, Pfizer is a day-to-day company in our country. Microsoft is in everybody's house. Whether it's you're talking about Procter and Gamble, which we start from the Johnson and Johnson baby powder since inception. These are companies which are not new to us anymore.
Right, right,
Right.
right,
So it's not something which is alien or you're looking at something new. Yeah, some of the large investing names could be new, but Facebook is a day-to-day usage. Who doesn't use the Mastercard today, or
right.
any of these names? They are not new names to India at all. I mean,
Hey.
Nike, look at the names it gives you: Netflix, Coca-Cola, Nike, PepsiCo. I mean, I could just go on, and it's some of them look more Indian to me than US already.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I just happened to notice, and I would urge our listeners on a easy Sunday morning, just look around you. You would see Nike shoes, you'd see Coca-Cola, Pepsi around you. You'd perhaps be browsing Netflix or Facebook using an Android phone run by Google. It's just all around us. The fact that we call it international does not make it international, especially when we live in a world where the world is our home. It's no longer just India. The world is our home today. And calling it international may be a technical term, but it is truly home. If you look at it, so any sort of biases should also include it, if nothing else. So Swaroop, while we are talking about international investing, I keep getting this question, okay, and I try to respond to it with a lot of data and a lot of perspectives, but wanted to hear your thoughts. People investing in funds based, investing into stocks outside of India are particularly concerned about the currency risk. So would
Yeah.
you like to share some perspectives on that?
I mean, that is where I again bring back Warren Buffett's statement during the 2008-2009 crisis: is the world, will trade in dollars.
Hmm.
It would mean that the dollar would, and that's what it's reflected against the rupee over a period of time. It is a stronger currency, and some of us who feel that the rupee can become stronger than the dollar can take their own call. But the reality is, and that is a stronger currency, and more important, if you invest in both the currencies, you will only be the winner, right?
Right.
If and the other part which a colleague of mine rightfully points out is that today a lot of parents want their kids to study abroad. So when
Hmm.
you are creating, say, those dollar liabilities, it is very important to also call those currency liabilities. It's important to also create those currency assets also,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it's way of looking at it. But when you look at the question of dollar versus rupee, it is very unemotionally speaking. It's a currency which you need to own.
Right, right. So, Swaroop, as we move towards the end of the conversation, there is one point that, also many investors have been raising. As Indian mutual funds are giving access to more and more international products, and especially in the US segment, there is often this question: is how do we decide as to how diversified an exposure is good enough? Like, for example, should I choose a fund feeding into S&P 500, into Nasdaq 100, into something like what Mirai is launching right now as we speak, is the top 50 S&P 500 top 50, or maybe just a Fang Plus sort of a portfolio. So from this wide array, how does one decide which is best suitable for his needs?
First of all, Nirav, I'm very happy that there is a wide array for me to
Right,
choose.
right,
Right, that is step one. Step two, of course, there is a certain need for advice. I would really recommend advice in this part because it is new and these are new markets. Those markets have different volatility. They go through different cycles. So
right.
the first step, and that is for any basic, is to form a core portfolio first. And the core
Right.
portfolio should be the basic diversified part of the market, which clearly the most the most sought after index is the S&P 500, right?
Right.
And that's the index to start with. Now the difference in our thought is we do believe that when the top 50 of these of the 500 sort of stocks form 45% of the US market, the top 50 stocks
Mm.
form 45% of the market cap of the US. You are practically owning the top 50 companies of the largest economy of the world. It makes sense to own 50 companies rather than the broad market. But the broad market is also available to you to own. So the choice is yours. But the good part is whether it's the S&P 500, the broad market index, or the top 50, these cater to the core part of your international investing portfolio. This is the strongest core part, like our diversified equity fund. This is
Mm.
what it is. Whether you choose the 500 or 50, I leave on to you. That is not my call. I'm a product manufacturer. If you ask me very simply, I will say my product is better. But I'm paid to say that, to be very honest. Okay.
Right.
But I would leave it to the both have their merits. Our view is post COVID, and that is not just for US, but for the broad world. The big will become bigger, and that is true for India also. Right? Our house
Right.
call in India is more large cap oriented than mid cap, and our expertise in the mid cap has been seen in the past. But in In spite of that, our house call today is the large in India will become larger, and that is coinciding with the global positioning that we have. That in the top 50 in the world will become bigger only. So why take the broad market when the 50 is available to you? But you have to decide. But the good part is whether you took the 500 or the 50, both cater to your core part of the portfolio. That is a must-have, right?
Right,
From
right.
from here, you go on to create the satellite part of the portfolio, where a Fang Plus sort of comes in, which is, if you look at US has graduated to these mega theme investors, but we
Right.
don't have that kind of risk profile yet, right?
Mhm.
US is getting into EVs, is getting into robotics, cloud computing, and some of you can follow our sister concern that is Global X, and see the kind of thematic products they bring out. But the US investor, because they are very qualified equity investors, have graduated to those mega themes. From a Fang Plus perspective, it is a 10 stock tech disruption portfolio. It is not core portfolio. It is a satellite portfolio which you take to enhance returns over your core portfolio. So the
Right.
difference between the two products is, and I'm so happy that we've launched the top 50, because with the top 50, you're talking about a diversified product. You're talking about products across different sectors and different industries, from financials to consumer services via information technology. You are getting a well diversified product, which is not in Fang Plus. I'm
Right.
not taking away anything from those 10 large disruptive technology companies, which
Right.
disrupt themselves also. But there is a merit to that. But this is a core portfolio product, which I want to differentiate at this moment. So this is a product you start with.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then as you get to know those markets, then you graduate to other markets. There is the Hang Seng in front of you. There is the other products that are, I'm sure India will provide them to you very soon, sooner than one expects. And then,
Right.
then one can graduate. But the first stop is US. The first stop is S&P 500, either the 500 or the 50. That's your call.
Right, right. In fact, I completely see the merit in a top 50 mega cap sort of a portfolio. In fact, I've also been publicly vocal about, how, at Fesdom Research, we believe this could be a very strong allocation proposition, and it deserves a place within core portfolios. So, Swaroop, I'm taking the opportunity to congratulate and express my gratitude for the work that Mirai has been doing in making such products accessible to Indians at scale. We have been waiting for such a access.
I mean, look at it. I mean, Nirav, see, the beauty of an index or an ETF is it is very selfish.
Right,
It doesn't care about the underlying. What it cares is the rule.
right,
It will always give you the top 50 companies of Nasdaq, of S&P 500.
right.
Whichever is not performing will go out overnight
Hmm.
and will be replaced by the other one. That is true for all indexes. And that is why, there is this big thing that we talk about, the risk of underperformance or the risk of a fund manager, which is
Hmm.
eliminated because of a rule-based investing. And that's what, and look at it, the top 50 companies of US, practically the top 50 companies of the world. Cannot be
Right,
a better portfolio than that. Then, and it's not by name, by rule. Whichever is the top 50, you are going to own, because it's going to rebalance every June.
right,
Yeah. And whichever
right.
does not fall that criteria just goes out and the other one is replaced. And that's the beauty. Hence, it becomes a powerful portfolio. And I would say I've never said this in my past, but I would say it's a must have portfolio.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the less spoken about virtue of investing in index-based products is what you see is what you get. Unlike most other actively managed funds, where one needs to really, really work their way through a lot of analytics to understand what is the fund trying to do and achieve. It is pretty straightforward and transparent when
And the
it comes to
portfolio is already
index-based.
there for you to check. I mean, you don't have to
Right.
form a portfolio, it's there. I mean, that's the beauty of index or ETF investing.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So, Swaroop, this brings us to the end of this conversation. I am extremely glad that we had this conversation. It has been so enriching and so insightful for me personally. I hope it has been as enriching for our listeners as well. So, Swaroop, thanks a lot for your time. It means a lot, and your insights, as always, is much, much, much beyond just valuable.
No, I'll have to thank you for giving me this great opportunity. I really appreciate. Thank you so much for having me, and huge shout out to Fisdom for doing this for us.
Thanks a lot, Swaroop. All the best for the NFL that's happening. I'm really excited for what Mira is having in store for us in the future as well. You have spoilt us all for choices and have made us expect a whole lot more. So thanks for
Thank
that.
you. Yes, yes. Keep expecting. It puts the right pressure on us.
Absolutely. So thank you, Swaroop. It's been great chatting.
Thank you. Really appreciate. Bye bye, and thank you to all the listeners.
Thank you. So, guys, this was Swaroop Mohanty, the CEO of Mirai Asset Mutual Fund, and we had an extremely interesting conversation around international investing, around US investing, around the risks involved, around the fundamentals that back such a proposition. This has been a truly exciting conversation, and I am extremely glad that I had this conversation, and I hope you guys also liked it. And we are open for feedback, suggestions. You know, please write to us at research@fisdom.com about what you thought about this session. I'm repeating the email. It is research@fisdom.com. And, share your feedbacks, your suggestions for our upcoming wealth spaces. We will be having another Wealthcast, which is a live session on YouTube, and you will be intimated about it. Keep following our social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and our own Fisdom application. You will be made aware of all our upcoming shows, either a wealthcast or a wealth space. Also, if any of you have any suggestions on whom do you want to hear on the Fisdom Wealth space, or whom do you want to watch on the Fisdom Wealthcast, write to us at research@fisdom.com, and we'll try our level best to get the guest of your choice basis popular demand, or else we will at least try to pick up the topics that you want us to address. So, guys, it's a great weekend ahead. The markets have closed at a lifetime high. It is great to take some time off and celebrate the success that the market has achieved, the broader indices have achieved. So have a great weekend. Happy investing. Follow us on our social media, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all of our social media handles. We'll be right back, and we are reachable at research@fisdom.com. See you around really, really soon with an exciting episode of the Fisdom Wealthcast next week, and a Fisdom Wealth Space in the week after that. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend.